Wow, well, Kim Moses, thanks so much for joining us. Watching that video, I feel like I've been to Hollywood and back in 5 minutes. It's really inspiring and exciting to think of all that energy that you must put into your work. So thank you for being here.
I'm going to take you back to Hollywood with me, and all of you are coming back with me, too.
Now, I just want to start out, we'll get into some of the women's stuff later, because I really want to get your view on that. But I want to start out with understanding where you see the TV format right now. You've said, written recently, that we're in the most disruptive era we've ever been in television. What's going on that is so disruptive, and is this a good thing that we're experiencing?
Actually, it is a good thing. And the disruption has been enormous in Hollywood, and I'm very curious. Part of the reason I'm here, in addition to being invited to speak, and I'm so appreciative of that invitation, is to meet people and network and understand what's going on in this part of the world. Back in the United States, in Hollywood, there's a huge disruption, and it's been edging towards a disruption for a number of years, particularly the last 4 years. And then the last 2 years, it's really erupted. And Netflix has been a huge part of it. Amazon has now come on the scene. So now what we have is, it used to be that we had 5 networks: ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and CW. Now we have 42 networks that we can take, just scripted drama and many others, where you can take different kinds of sports and unscripted and lots of other things. So that in itself is very disruptive. And then the other part of it is that the process itself, because now you can download and you can watch what you want to watch, how you want to watch it, thanks to Netflix and changing the model, what's happening is that people are consuming content so fast that there's not going to be enough time in the next, I believe, 2 years, based on the analytics we've done, for the studios and networks and digital platforms to backload all of this content, because it takes about 9 months to incubate, a pilot. So what that means in the global market is that we are going to even more aggressively be looking at formats in other parts of the world to bring here, because it'll demonstrate that it has legs. And so as a result of that, the wave that's coming, I can't encourage this part of the world and other countries to create as much original content as you possibly can, because content is king, and it's not going to be for the next year. It's going to be for at least the next 10 years that we're in the golden age of television.
Interesting. So content is king. I get that. But tell us what would be good content. Like, what would work in the US coming from Asia? What kind of stuff should we be creating?
Well, when you're creating content, what I mean by content is that we would take your formats, buy them, which is something we just did with a Turkish format. My partner Ian Sander, who's in the audience, and I found a Turkish format over in Cannes, brought it back to the United States, and broke open the Turkish market, which had never been done in Hollywood. Now we also just bought a French format and over in Cannes this year, and brought that over. The Turkish one is Runner, and that's being made at Fox. And then the other one is called Risk, and that one is being made at ABC Network. So it's taking not a one-for-one conversion where I take your show and it plays in your country, in your language, with your cultural essence, but if I believe that the story or the characters or the sensibility can really translate into an American show, like Homeland was Prisoners of War in Israel. It's a huge hit, as you know, in the United States and all around the world. And so if we can take those formats and make them more American-centric, then it's a very valuable commodity.
That's a really interesting aspect of globalization, because I think a lot of us placed here in Asia tend to think of these American shows coming over and taking over. So seeing that reverse is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. I do want to, though, get into your brain and understanding from you that sense of creativity as a producer. What do you think makes compelling content for this new model of television?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the age-old thing of story first. Great story with a beginning, a middle, and an end that's compelling and has a unique voice, which is important in regards to a writer. And then, of course, characters. And the thing about series, and that's one of my expertise, is there's an art to getting people to watch the first show and then come back week after week because they've hooked into the characters and they're fascinated with the journey or the mythology or, you know, what's going to happen in the future. And those are very important things in the United States. I'm not sure how it works in this part of the world, but I do know that the formats that we bought, they've also done that in foreign countries. So it just seems that, you know, to make things work, that's pretty standard. And then, you know, for our recipe, it's really, or our formula is really, it's a girl term, so I go to formula, is that we take things that are, you know, they're connected to what's going on in the world, they're culturally relevant, so they're familiar, but then we find things that you know, we mix and meld things into them that are unusual, that make the material feel undiscovered. So Ghost Whisperer is a typical example of that. So it's a woman who crosses people over, you know, from the dead. Or this new show, which is Runner, which is about a woman who gets caught in a gun running, you know, ring that she is totally unintended, and that goes between the United States and Mexico, where there's an iron river running between the states, down to Mexico with guns, that most people in America don't know that guns are illegal in Mexico. And so when we discovered that, we thought those were really interesting elements that were not in the Turkish format to add to it.
So when you see an image or read a script, do you just see it very, very quickly? This is going to work. This is going to happen.
No. It takes a lot of work to figure out what's
fall
going to
in
work.
love in 1 second.
Right. I wish it was a magic trick, but it's not. No, and in fact, every January until March, myself, my partner, my team, we do what we call the POV document, which is we do research on what's happening in the world globally in regards to culture and also finance and, you know, things that are happening that are spiking. And then we come to the United States and we do an analysis of that. And then lots of other things like experts and heads of network studios. We go outside of Hollywood. We feel that's really important. We look at the box office. We look at publishing. We'll see what's happening in the middle of America. I have the Vault, which I think we're probably going to talk about. And, you know, I always use them as a sounding board. And all of those kinds of things. And that report is about 1,000 pages. And it's very tedious to put together, but it's also fascinating to see how much the world changes from year to year. And then I take that and I hone that down to about a 22-page executive summary, and that is our lens for looking at material. And we use culture decoders and trend masters and all that kind of thing. And it's not that any one of them dictate what we're going to develop. It's just that taking all that and putting it together and then looking through the lens at every piece of material, it helps us figure out what we're going to develop. And because development and the creative process can be very, very chaotic, and especially when it's in such a huge shift as it is in Hollywood right now. And without that, what I find is that we and lots of other people always are chasing, you know, content that somebody else bought or somebody came up with, and you have to come up with it from within and then put it out there.
Wow. I want to get a little bit more into Hollywood because we do get
no, you don't.
Who, yeah. I don't want to be there myself. I want to hear about it because in Hong Kong we get Hollywood people coming through, but this idea of working in Hollywood and being part of that, and you say in such a disruptive time, is it stressful, exciting? I mean, would you change what you've done and the career path that you're in? Is it an exciting time?
It is a very exciting time. There's a lot of fear there right now. And when there's fear, people want to play safe. So I'm seeing with the networks in particular, the 5 major networks, that they are pulling back, ordering less pilots, more, you know, straighter material, just a safer path, when it should be the exact opposite. Because what happened with cable was, a number of years ago, they were doing so terribly because they were the new kids on the block. And they became very brave. And that's where Mad Men and, you know, House of Cards and Breaking Bad and all those kinds of shows came from. And I do believe that, you know, based on our analysis, that really what should be happening is the network should be leaning forward and being more aggressive. Like, for instance, Amazon has a new show, and it's making a lot of waves back in Hollywood, and it's called Transparent. Totally unexpected for Amazon. But what it's given them is it's given them their signature for content to be different and special rather than be in the pack. And I don't know that that was intentional. I think they discovered it and now they've found their way. So I think you can expect interesting things from them. In regards to, do I love it? I love what I do. But I grew up in a very poor coal mining town in southwestern Pennsylvania where people worked in a coal mine or they worked in the steel mill. Nobody had any money. So the idea that I'm now in Hollywood doing, a white-collar job, I guess you can call producing and directing and writing white-collar, I'm the luckiest person in the world, I think.
Now, some of the characters that you've developed in your TV shows, they're heroines. They're sort of savvy, sexy, smart women.
Right.
Did you do that on purpose, or did that just come naturally to you to have those types of characters in your shows?
They're intentional, and it's because our brand as a company is female empowerment with a twist that brings in men. And it's not because I'm a woman, because my partner, who's a very secure person, is a man. It's because we've been tracking what's happening in the United States. And what's happening in the United States is that women have been moving forward on the financial sectors and having a big impact. We're huge influencers when it comes to brand buying and purchasing, and women control 80% of the purse strings in the United States. We are the most aggressive and most dedicated in watching scripted dramas. We also drive social media, particularly when it's connected to digital content, entertainment content, and we drive e-commerce. So for all those reasons, the idea that women should be featured in shows that don't turn men away, but that embrace women to come as an audience is a really important thing. It's a cultural relevance to what's going on in the world. And I don't know here, maybe you can say something about it, I don't know what's happening here in this part of the world, but certainly as I've traveled around to other parts of the world, that's also happening. And, follow the money. Brands understand, or starting to understand, the value of women and spending and recommending, and so therefore that branding is coming to support content on television and on digital platforms.
Fascinating. I do want to get into the women thing, but first a comment that's come up, which you might want to comment on, on the AskCASBAA.com.
Right.
It says, the truth is that U.S. formats aren't as popular anymore in Asia as Korean content. And that is a really interesting point. Korean soap operas and videos have gone absolutely crazy here. Korean and increasingly Chinese program is now priced at the top of the market, whereas U.S. content is not often as popular in many markets in Asia.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is sort of a rise of Asia content that maybe the U.S. hasn't understood yet, especially that Korean element?
Yes, and I actually had a meeting back in Hollywood with our company and our team and talked about how it was the Danish content was, what everybody was chasing in Hollywood. And then it was the content from Israel. And then it was, now it's the Turkish. When we broke the Turkish market open, then everybody was chasing Turkey. And I had just said that Korea is the next market that's going to, break wide open. And I would love to be the one, to crack that. So wherever you are, anybody from Korea, I'd love to talk to you.
Anyone from Korea?
Anybody here from Korea? No?
They're all in Seoul. People are flocking to Seoul.
Yes,
It's absolutely
right.
amazing. I think I saw one hand there.
Will you stay afterwards so I can meet you, please? Yeah. So, and what's really important is that, it'll be Korea next, I hope, and I hope I can help with that. And then it'll be another country. And the reason is because with digital media, we are also interconnected now, and we are finally understanding that something that happens on that side of the world affects this side of the world. And something that people care about over there, we care about as well. And that really is because of, digital media, social content.
And speaking of connecting the world, you kindly gave me this book called Stiletto Network, Inside the Women's Power Circles That Are Changing the Face of Business. Yeah. I love that title, Stiletto Network. Do you have one of those in Hollywood? Are there just so few women in top positions that they need to get together to form their own cliques?
I do have one in Hollywood, and it's called The Vault, and it's the first chapter. Pamela Rickman, who's a writer for the New York Times, wrote this book. And what she discovered was that there are a number of these groups across the country. They're small groups of women who are very successful, who are connecting in unique ways and helping each other through business. So I put together this group called The Vault, and every month we get together and we have dinner and we talk about business strategy. And by the way, the women who are in The Vault are not just women who are in show business. They're also Kathy Magliato, who's one of the world female premier heart surgeons, and Gail Becker, who runs the largest marketing company in the world, Edelman. And women like that who are doing really important things in the world that, you know, they have a unique strategy to share. So we get together, and then we have a special guest every month who comes in and joins us and talks about what they're doing in the world that's really important and unusual. And we call it The Vault because we don't talk about it outside of the vault unless everybody agrees that we can. And if it's something that we or that special guest wants amplified, we're very good at amplifying. And what Pamela found in doing these pieces on these different groups is that there is this underground railroad in the United States of women who are moving through business in very aggressive, important ways. And it's not that, you know, they're elbowing guys out of the way. It's just that, you know.
Excuse me, guys.
Right. We hold up half the sky. So.
And do you think we need that? But do we need an underground railroad of women to get ahead? I mean, is that necessary, do you think?
It's not intentional that it's an underground railroad. It's that these things are happening and they haven't really bubbled up to the surface yet. But yes, I do think it is really important that this is happening because, I mean, the projections when you read the analysis, the financial analysis in the United States is that in the next 5 years, women are going to be the most aggressive and successful small business owners and the leaders in entrepreneurship. And that's going to help move us, you know, even further out of the recession. And so it's very important. It's just important by way of, you know, surviving and thriving. And if we have something to offer and we can stand side by side with men to do that, that's a really good thing.
Now, you've been in Asia a very short time, but I've also seen that you've met a lot of people very quickly, as shy as you are. What are your impressions of how Asia works, especially in terms of women and networking, et cetera? Is it different?
Well, Asia is different, first of all, and as every culture is different. Although it's not as different as I thought it would be, and I would imagine when I come back in a year or two, that it will be even less different than, you know, it has been in the past. And again, I think it's just because of the interconnection of people and women, and I've met incredible women. What's so surprising about it is that women come here, well, I don't know about men, but I've met so many women who have come here just in happenstance and fallen in love with Hong Kong. And if you've got people who are here and they're passionate about your world, that's a great thing because they're going to contribute.
And Hong Kong is a place where you can really just start up and live out your dreams, etc. So maybe it's part of it. But we do hope you come back and spend some more time with us. I'd like to get just one last question in about the feeling of being a woman in Hollywood, because I think some of the images of Hollywood are, it's a brutal place. In order for a woman to be successful there, you have to be either really lucky or basically a pretty hardcore person. Is that true? Or can you be like a nice person, a nice woman, and work in Hollywood and be successful?
For me, the success of Hollywood is working hard. And there are some women at the top of some of the networks and some of the studios, particularly in cable, and now, you know, it's starting at the networks. But the gatekeepers, the ultimate gatekeepers at this moment in time are pretty much still men. And I will tell you, as a female director, there are still very, very few. I think it's 13% of women are directors, that just doesn't make any sense. So, and the same thing with showrunners. It is really hard still for women to break in. So we do a lot of, giving opportunities to women. The show that we just did, Reckless, interestingly, we had almost all women on the crew. We had a woman, Catherine Hardwicke, who directed Twilight. She, let's see, time is up. Anyway, she directed the pilot, and we had a female showrunner, Dana Stevens, who wrote the script, and casting and costume design, production design, all women, many, many women. And it wasn't that we set out to hire all those women. We hired the right people for the job, with this particular content. And it just so happened that this content was about, it had a female lead in it, character, and then it was about lawyers and cops, but the linchpin was sex. And so we wanted to make sure that if this was going to welcome women in as well as men, we knew men would show up, because it was about sex. And it had cops and all kinds of things. But to welcome women into that world, it had to have a certain sensibility. Not a soft sensibility, but a contemporary sensibility that was accessible to women today.
Wow, interesting stuff. Now, we have run out of time, and I know you wanted to show a short video on our way out, so do you want to do that before we say goodbye?
Just introduce it. It's just a short video that kind of shows, it's Ghost Whisper, which is playing all over the world, and it shows the scope of the type of shows that we do, which is we don't just do a television show, we do the total engagement experience, which is across every platform, assets that give an audience an extended experience, and we drive that audience from platform to platform, and it builds loyalty, brings in new revenue sources, and creates fresh press buzz from week to week.
We are so out of time, Kim. It was such a pleasure to have you, and I hope you come back to Asia soon.
Oh, I would love to.
Thanks, everyone.